Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to what I am being told is Season 2, Episode 11, Family Appreciation Day. This is the episode in which Granny Smith has to go and give a presentation for Apple Bloom, but Apple Bloom is super embarrassed about her, embarrassing grandparent. And so she tries many hijinks to avoid it and eventually fails, but then Granny Smith gives her a presentation. It's kind of awesome. And then the episode ends on two wah-wahs. But we'll get there. And yes, as usual, Tabitha St. Germain is a freaking treasure. So, this, I have to say, this is probably the weirdest cold open I've seen in this entire show. It's just her clang, clang, clang. The timber wolves are howling. The timber wolves are howling. And they're all like, yeah, Zap-apple jam. And then cut to thing. That is the weirdest cold open I've seen in this show. I don't even know what the point of that is. So, I do have to admit something. There's this bit where she's like... Let me start by saying this. I've actually talked about this before, how I feel that Granny Smith kind of... See you around, everybody, and have a good one. Granny Smith wasn't a character, and then slowly became a character. I would say that this is probably the official episode at which I would say Granny Smith... Wow, heck. I would say this is probably the official episode where I would say Granny Smith is officially a character. That's just my opinion. And obviously she will continue to have plenty of character stuff going forward, but it's been more development and working up to things up to this point. That being said, you'll notice that in almost every previous thing to now, Granny Smith has been, she's old, and that's her character note, the one beat of her character. Well, she's old. Whereas now it's more like, they do the she's the old thing at the very beginning. What? Yep, no, I remember. What am I remembering? And then at the very end of the episode, but other than that, she's perfectly, the opposite of senile. She's perfectly lucid and capable of thinking and functioning in pretty much the entire in-between there. Just my opinion. So we also see Filthy Rich. Filthy Rich, who is, of course, the father of Diamond Tiara. Sensible, I like that. Functional also works. Oh, I forgot to change outfits. Oh my god, I was so screwed up about the episode. So some of you are probably wondering why we're covering this episode. I should talk about this episode instead of Hearthwarming Eve. It's because I go via Amazon's list, because that's where I own the show. And on this, it's Season 2, Episode 11, releasing December 17th, 2011, is Family Appreciation Day, and Hearthwarming Eve is Episode 13. Now, this is not the first time I've seen a disconnect between DVDs and digital releases, and in fact, I mean, this is a very common problem. This happened with Babylon 5, this happens with several shows of Star Trek, this happens with Firefly all over the place. This also happened with, I want to say, one of the Clone Wars episodes. But the point being, this is a common problem. Historically speaking, it usually happens because of a disconnect between production order and release order, which are not necessarily the same thing. I don't actually know what causes the issue here. I assumed it was because of release order, but apparently, according to something else, Hearthwarming Eve released on December 17th instead of Family Appreciation Day. I don't know, guys. I am unaware of what is causing this disconnect. But we are following the Amazon order. I will try to make it clear in the announcements on Lore Week and in the stream title which episode we're covering, just to make sure there's no issues going forward. Sorry. Anyways, so we see Filthy Rich, who is the father of Diamond Tiara, who is of course already the bully. That's already her one character beat. She'll become a character later on too. I want to talk about bullying really quick here, because bullying is a very real problem even to this very day for adults. Yeah, Mr. Filthy, right? How many people call me Mr. Lore, after all? So, one of the things that is most difficult for me is to deal with bullies by acknowledging that they're not worth listening to, but I want to try and explain what I mean by that. Well, I mean, Runner's my last name, right? So Mr. Runner, wouldn't that make more sense? Anyways. Let's say that I look at... The next person's going to chat and chat. Of course, now no one's talking. Okay, Dream Whisperer. So I look at Dream Whisperer, and I'm like, Dream Whisperer, you are, you're so, you like apples so much. We'll keep the fruit theme going that we have today. And it's like, oh my god, what is wrong with you? Like, why do you like apples? Okay, I'm not a good bully, but just bear with me. Like, I can't even imagine how embarrassing it must be to let everyone in school know that you actually like apples. I mean, I'm not here to judge, you know, obviously someone like you would be into apples, right? But I'm just saying, I'd probably keep that under wraps. You know, that kind of a thing. How many of you have heard of bullying like that? Because I have. I get that kind of bullying on a weekly basis. Now, on YouTube comments, usually. Now, I bring this up because the disconnect here, and this is actual a life hack thing, or whatever you want to call it. The disconnect is you have to... Oh, I know, Ethel. I grew up in California, dude. Although usually I ended up just beating the crap out of the bullies who came after me because that's how you did that. That's what worked. But I'm getting off topic. The point being, bullying is still a thing on the internet and in real life even after you get out of school. It's not like it just suddenly stops, right? Like I said, I deal with it on a weekly basis. But the point is, the thing that you have to understand is that bully doesn't give a crap about apples. They don't give a crap. They don't actually think apples are embarrassing. They have no opinion on the matter. Now that, in my opinion, is an extremely important thing to cognate, to get into your brain, because then you realize that what they're saying effectively boils down to, I'm hurting you, I'm hurting you, I'm hurting you, I'm hurting you, you're stupid, I'm hurting you. And once you realize that all they're saying is basically nonsense, that doesn't actually have any validity or grounding in reality, that's the moment you realize that what they're saying doesn't matter, and that's the moment it stops affecting you. Now, you're probably thinking, why am I going on this? Because this episode is a textbook example of that. She clearly doesn't actually have anything against Granny Smith, and she doesn't actually, you know, give a damn about Granny Smith or the embarrassing things or whatever. She only points it out as a vector by which to hurt Apple Bloom. That's all she cares about. She doesn't actually think, you know, Granny Smith is embarrassing, and she doesn't actually think that Granny's, you know, jumping around in the bunny costume is humiliating. She just is trying to bully. And when someone's only motivation is to hurt you without any validity in reality, all of the sudden you could see that disconnect, right? Now, I'm not saying a kid should get that, although I have had this very same discussion with my niece, because, you know, she's been going to school for a couple of years now, and she has to start dealing with this. But that disconnect helps so much in dealing with bullying. And of course, again, Apple Bloom didn't even recognize anything weird about the behavior. I was about to talk about that, Rascor, until Diamond Tiara pointed it out. And then what usually happens. Because remember, if Apple Bloom said, oh, you're just saying that to hurt me, and brushed it off, it would have been over. But instead, she does what most people do. And I do this too. There's a reason I came up with this whole this methodology of dealing with bullying, is because we all have this problem where we take them seriously as if what they say is the truth. As if what they're saying has an actual basis in reality. Oh my gosh, you're right. This is all embarrassing. And yeah, exactly, Sean. We get self-conscious. We get worried. Oh God, maybe I shouldn't like apples. I mean, I don't know what they mean by that. Someone like me would like apples. What are they implying? And your mind just kind of takes it and runs with it, right? It's like, oh my gosh, you're totally right. What's wrong with me? And then from that moment on, Apple Bloom goes from being excited about being a part of these endeavors to being embarrassed by it, for no other reason than the fact that the seed was planted. You'll notice later on there's another textbook example of this. Oh, did I write it down? Half pint. There's this bit where Granny Smith refers to Apple Bloom affectionately as a half pint. They then immediately take that and say, half pint. Now, they don't mean anything by that. It's an affectionate nickname. Again, there's no validity. There's no reality there. But they take that and use that as another vector by which to accomplish the only thing they care about, hurting Apple Bloom. Yeah, Diamond Tiara's only real talent is, well, actually getting other people to listen to her, which is very similar to that. I'm going to leave my thoughts on Diamond Tiara later. Basically, I dislike her right up until they turn her into a character. That's going to be a ways from now, though. We'll get there later. And they also show that all the Granny Smith's doing wasn't just kookiness or silliness or whatever. She was doing it for deliberate purpose. I'll talk about that more later. I want to talk about the world building as a separate category. Because the bullying thing is the main thrust of the episode, and it's a good episode for that. It's a good episode to talk about bullying and about how much it bothers us, right up until we hit the Wacky Hijinks chapter of the episode. Oh, you know what the Wacky Hijinks chapter is, right? How many of you have seen sitcoms? Oh no, I've accidentally scheduled the date tonight at the same time as this presentation I'm supposed to give. I could be an adult about this matter, or I could have wacky hijinks. I tend to not like wacky hijinks if it's not obvious. I'll just wear an outfit and I'll put a suit on over my nice outfit and I'll just go back. Every time I'll pretend I'm going to the bathroom and go give the office presentation, then I'll go back and woo my date, and I'll just go back and forth until, oh my god, it all goes wrong. No. Comedy. I'm sorry, personal preference. I can't stand wacky hijinks. They can be done well, but what I am defining, I am not a fan of. So, wacky hijinks. So first of all, actually, before I move into the wacky hijinks thing, Apple Bloom naturally magnifies this issue way out of proportion. I'm going to be the most embarrassed filly in the class, and it's going to be so humiliating. Once again, while that is almost precious to look at from the modern perspective, isn't that incredibly accurate? Hell, I know adults who take relatively small things and get really wigged out about them. I know someone personally, I'm not going to name who it is, who got really wigged out by having to drive recently. I'll give you one of my own. Tomorrow I have an inspection coming in. I actually referenced this during the Lore Week thing. The apartment people are coming around to inspect it, and I'm pretty wigged out about that. It's a totally minor thing. They're going to be here for like 5 minutes, max. But I'm like, oh god, what are they here for? And the mind just takes it, right? And runs with it. Oh god, they're going to show up and they're going to kick me out. I'm going to be evicted, and it's going to be horrible, and they're going to slap me with all sorts of fines. None of that's going to happen. I know that intellectually. That's the difference between being a kid and being an adult in a nutshell, is having the experience to be able to process things like this. We still react emotionally the same way, right? At least we should. But we look at that like, okay, no, it's cool. I got this. I'm going to be able to deal with this. I'd say it gave me an excuse to clean, but that's not true. My house is always clean. Anyways, I like having a clean place. What do you want from me? But, so her magnifying this way out of proportions makes a lot of sense. No, exactly. I don't, Bragwin. It makes perfect sense for Apple Bloom to magnify this issue way out of proportion, and to become, oh my god, this is horrible. This is the worst thing. What am I doing? Again, she actually did this in season 1, episode 12, Call of the Cutie as well. So, hey, Mr. Ed, yes, you did. It's a good lore week. Go watch it. Now, and I mean that sincerely. You should go watch it. You should also voot. So the hijinks phase. So first, oh my god, she's totally sick. Naturally, that doesn't work for even longer than a few seconds. I kind of like that. It's a good message to show to kids that you probably shouldn't fake illness to get out of school. And of course, you know, this is the time-honored method. Hell, I've done that before. Then of course, they only try one thing per day, naturally. Then they try to harvest early, which just leads to slapstick. And pigs! So, Sean brought something up. They raise pigs. What do you think they're raising for? Now, the pigs thing will actually come up later, too. They're a recurring element. Why do they raise pigs? That's actually an interesting thing, because they usually raise pigs for food. But I was actually going to say truffles. Apparently, it's by word of God. I didn't know that. I was going to theorize that it was for truffles, because they don't eat them and they don't produce milk. So what else could pigs be good for? Well, truffles, right? So there you go. They raise them for truffles. I mean, the chickens make sense. Eggs, right? That's a good idea. Garbage disposal. I didn't even think about that. And manure is a possible thing. Although they never addressed that on the show. But again, you know, we're within the realms of world building. That does make sense. So then they try. So they try to harvest. That doesn't work out. Then they try to pull Weekend at Bernie's. How many of you have even seen that movie? Now, what's funny is the Weekend at Bernie's trick worked completely, except for the fact that Scootaloo got too excited and flipped out and woke Granny up. So then she wakes up and is like, yeah, no, I'll show up. Okay. So then they try to send her off on a train ride to see a family of mine, which also would have worked if not for the fact that by absolutely random chance, the family member she was going to see was actually on the train visiting her, which is ridiculous odds. And I found myself thinking how strange it is that apparently two of her wacky hijinks would have worked completely if not for what is effectively random chance. Usually they don't go that way. I'm not sure what they were thinking with that one, but anyways, moving on. So, then Granny Smith gives the thing. Now, I actually wrote down her whole, some thoughts on her whole discussion of the founding of Ponyville separately. First of all, being seed collectors makes a degree of sense, and roamers, gypsies, I suppose would be the more accurate term, that, roam from place to place. But they really wanted someplace to settle. Now, this is interesting. So, first of all, they go to Canterlot. Notice how Canterlot looks very Renaissance. Like a Renaissance fair, I mean, Obviously more posh, but at the same time also being, older. Yeah, Celestia looks exactly the same as she should, ageless. You'll also notice that they're like, we need someplace to set up shack, and Celestia says, I've got the perfect place. It just happens to be a place where food is kind of scarce, and it's right next to the Everfree Forest. This, I think, is yet another example. We're up to, I should have been keeping track. This should be none of our counters. I think this is yet another example of Celestia being a well-intentioned but incompetent leader. Because you'll notice, basically, the way it's described is that this area was abandoned for a frickin' reason. That, it's not a very arable area, and it's right next to a very dangerous area. But no, you can totally settle there because no one else is there, right? It's all yours. Have it. Again, I'm not trying to insult Celestia per se, but I don't think she's a good leader. I never have. Now, in this episode, Granny Smith decides in desperation, before they get to the slicing up a bean thing from Mickey Mouse, she decides to go ahead and go into the Everfree Forest in order to find some kind of food, any kind of food. And she happens to find the Zap-apples. Now, this is interesting, because this, I think, is the official moment that the original continuity of the Everfree Forest has been thrown out the window. Because we have timber wolves made of timber, ha ha ha, and Zap-apples growing in the Everfree Forest. Remember, the original definition of the Everfree Forest was that was the normal place where animals took care of themselves, trees and plants grew on their own, and the weather was natural. Right? That was the whole shtick. I think this is officially when that was abandoned, because it comes up a few times after this, and it's pretty clear that it's just another dangerous area. It's just supposed to be a place of danger, and that's its new slot, the mystical, weird place. There are two examples prior to now of this idea being abandoned. One was the cockatrice, which was in there, and the other is the, oh my god, the laughing joke, the flower. The poison joke, that's it, the poison joke flowers. So I think this is a direction they've been going at pretty much since the first episode. I just think this is officially, yeah, no, this is completely unusual. Anyways, so they discover the Zap-apples and the timber wolves. And I like how it takes time and iteration to figure out what it makes to really make these things grow and be harvested and planted, and of course then to turn them into Zap-apple jam. Now, yeah, the Ursa Minor was there too. I forgot about that one, but you're right. The reason I bring that point up is because what she's doing is effectively casting a spell over, or I suppose through, a magical fruit. She is not literally using magic, but she is creating the circumstances by which something can magically turn into something else, which is basically the definition of a spell. I just think that's interesting that they showcase that like that. Yeah, practical magic. Or ritual magic. That's a good way to put that for D&D terminology. This could also be alchemy, which is also, that kind of a thing. Now, I like that idea. I like that idea a lot. And in fact, it's kind of a cool way to establish something. I love this kind of world building. A food that is basically unnatural and rare. I love that. But anyways, so she talks about how she went through all this whole thing. And then they do a bit where they talk about how Stinkin' Rich showed up to buy the Zap-apple jam. And what follows makes perfect sense, right? You have a valuable product that apparently only grows here due to unique, circumstantial, magical environments, right? So the only thing that can happen, the only place you can get this commodity is right here. Now, someone rich, Stinkin' Rich in this case, sets up the commerce line, so the railway gets set up, so the town gets set up, and this makes perfect... This is literally how towns have been built so many times in real-life history, is trade, commerce. I love that little tidbit. And the idea that Ponyville would basically grew up as a trade town based on these gems, that's actually really cool. And, of course, ties Granny Smith and the entire Apple family very neatly into the creation of the town and the history of it. Love this kind of world building, by the way, I really do. So forgive me for gushing, but I love this concept. Which, of course, leads me to the actual Zap-apples themselves. So the thunderstorm is the first thing that sweeps through. Yeah, Filthy Rich is very respectful to Granny. That's actually going to come up later, too. And he should be. First of all, he's a decent fellow. By the way, I like how Filthy Rich is a wealthy person who is portrayed as a decent person. Again, this is something MLP likes to do. They like to have reasonable authority figures. I like that. His wife, much worse, but we won't see her for a while. But Filthy Rich is consistently pretty chill throughout the series. Ugh. He just doesn't like being called filthy for some reason. Anyways, so a natural thunderstorm, which isn't provoked by any of the weather ponies, shows up and causes this interaction with the seeds so the trees grow. Then we see a second storm worm through. That turns them into the flowers. And then finally, the electrical current pushes through them, causing another thunderstorm. This one is actually a rainstorm, the first one of the three that's been rain. The rain causes the rainbows trigger the actual Zap-apples, but they only stay there for one day and then they're gone. I could spend a while figuring out the specifics of why and how all this happens. I just like the idea that it does. I'm not going to bore you all with this. We've already talked a lot about bullying and magic and commerce. Let's just say that I really enjoy that concept. The special magical fruit that only grows right here. That's such a cool idea. And of course, the fact that it can be used for so many different effects. Once harvested, it is no longer part of the equation, basically. Because you notice if they don't harvest them, they're gone. I really want to know what they taste like, too, Sean. Because we know what rainbows taste like. They are very spicy. So, are these like spiced apples? And we see that they can make all kinds of food out of this. Does this fall into technobabble? Yes and no. Because this is a form of technobabble. It's nonsense. But it's different because the main thing I was compelling about earlier was technobabble problem with a technobabble solution. This doesn't quite fit in because there's no problem and there's no solution here. There's just technobabble, and that's where the apples come from. So, still kind of questionable. And in fact, I would rather there was a more logical construct to the way this works. Like I said, I could really discuss this. So again, a bit of a ding there, but now we have Zap-apples. And of course, we have to go under this whole process to turn the Zap-apples into the best pipe of jam. That's the alchemy thing we talked about earlier. That actually makes a degree of sense. The alchemy thing. I'm with that. Yeah, she even has a line. Magic is and magic does, I think, or something like that. So, I'm sorry, what do you mean, Weouds? You've talked about the Winds of Magic thing several times. Do you mind clarifying? Yep, talking to the bees. Well, it's not just talking to the bees. She just has to make sure the bees are in a good mood so they can make the best kind of honey they can. Okay, I'm with that. Making sure the jars are solid and aren't going to crack under pressure. Okay, that makes sense. Polka dots on the room? All I can think about is how much of a pain that's got to be to clean up every year. But that's the one where I'm like... And you gotta dance and sing to the water to make sure the water's the right thing. There's a few things there that just kind of make me go, uh-huh. Like I said, some of it actually makes sense and some of it does not. And I'm pretty sure the whole point is to just do the whole thing and make it whatever. Ah, so you mean like this could literally be a seasonal magic thing instead of a seasonal weather thing, Weodes? Like every now and again, whoosh, and that, based on the confluence of this spot, it basically, you know, makes the Zap-apples. That also then would explain why they go away afterwards, too. That would actually be this finger. Because the winds would have kept moving. Honestly, Raskor, I admit that I get the trial and error thing. I mean, real life technology and history is all built on trial and error. Like, medicine, you know, look, study history of medicine sometimes. It's ridiculous. And kind of hilarious. But, yeah, I do have to admit, I wonder how she got to the point of drawing polka dots on the wall. Like, the rest of it I can kind of see. Oh, God, the miasma theory. It would, Weodes, it would. That is an interesting theory. We'll have to see how it continues to develop going forward. Yeah, iterations is a big deal when it comes to development. But we usually stumble into the initial development in real-life history. So I can kind of see it. Anyways, I'm sorry. I've probably talked too long here. This is a good episode. I do like this episode. However, it ends on not one, but two wah-wahs. First, we have the wah-wah where Granny Smith suddenly goes back to being her own forgetful self, and then we go into a wah-wah of Diamond Tiara being forced to go and jump along with him, even though she doesn't want to. I would like to give this one two wah-wahs. What do you guys think? Because this is just bad. It's possible it's not Earth Pony magic at all, Weodes. It's possible it is literally part of the magical weather system of the Everfree Forest. I'm seeing some yeses. We're doing it. We're doing it. Committing. Wah, wah. Where's the... There it is. There we go. Two wah-wahs, because holy crap. Apparently I haven't been updating my local things. Ponyville's been damaged. Stuff has been knocked off shelves. There we go. Okay. Oh, that's possible. That's possible, Weodes. However, I don't think that's 100% true. This is just my theory crafting at this point. But I think it's entirely possible that a pony who can use magic, you know, a unicorn or an alcorn, could probably simulate the stuff she does with a spell. Basically recreating the same circumstances, the same pattern, the same alchemy, in order to accomplish the same result. But that would probably take a lot of time and effort and study. And it would probably require, you know, a precise level of casting. That being stated, otherwise I'd say probably, yeah. Like, I don't think a Pegasus could do the same kind of thing. I like that idea, Bragwin. Because the farm is pretty close to the Everfree Forest, but it's not right on the border. And yeah, it's entirely possible they're literally trying to coax some of the magic that is innate to the Everfree Forest out into the area where they're making the stuff. Which is funny, because if that's actually true, she probably could have saved herself a lot of trouble if she just made the stuff in the Everfree Forest. Although that would, of course, be very dangerous, so I could see why she wouldn't want to do that. Certainly not early on. It's one of those things, right? You figure out what works, and then you go with it. You don't really understand why it works, but you go with it. Anybody who's ever worked in IT can understand that mentality, I'm sure. If you do this and upload this and then turn this off and do this, then it will work. It won't crash. Why? But it works. Anyways, I think that's it. So let me go ahead and chop off the local recording.